Hello everyone, my name is Merritt. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're doing a video that I'm honestly so excited for. I think that this is one of the most innovative videos that I've ever planned on my channel, and I'm so excited to get into it and share what I'm doing today with you guys. Today we're going to be starting to read 3 books with similar covers. I'm so excited. I haven't seen this video like anywhere on BookTube, and I just knew I had to do it. I am so obsessed with this idea, and I hope that this goes well. But we're basically going to be seeing how similar these 3 books are based on their cover, as well as what the actual story is about. So first of all, I want to show you guys all these covers and how crazy similar they are. I'm going to start off with these 2 because they're actually using the same exact stock image. If you can see that, sorry the lamination's so bad, but there's this one and this one. How crazy is that? And then with this book, the stock image is a little bit different, but the text and the spines are so similar. Like it's crazy that these books exist and that they all look so similar. So I thought it would be fun to read them and see if they're actually the same on the inside too. So that's what we're gonna be doing today. I have no idea what these books are about. I just picked them out based on the aesthetics alone. So first of all, we're going to be going through the summaries of each of these books and finding out what they're about together. And then after I read each individual book, I will check in with you guys, tell you what it's about, what I thought, and at the very end, I'll be doing a comparison and contrast on were these books actually similar or were they completely different, and the only thing that was actually similar about them was their cover. So I'm gonna start off with Charlie Presumed Dead. This one I think had like a 2.99 on Goodreads, so guys, I'm terrified. This book is not gonna be good, but who knows, it might surprise me, but more than likely not, because it is a YA mystery. And I haven't had a lot of luck with those. So what this book is about. Charlie, charming, jet-setting, handsome. Oh no. This is already off to a bad start, but I'm honestly interested in seeing how chaotic this book is because Charlie has 2 girlfriends. Lena, reckless, impassioned, glamorous, she's angry and she'll risk everything to uncover Charlie's lies. I would too. Why has he got 2 girlfriends? Aubrey, creative, vulnerable, sheltered. She never realized her capacity for revenge until now. There's more to read about this book, but do I really need to know more going in besides Charlie has 2 girlfriends and they're probably gonna team up and kill him? This sounds absolutely awful. I'm here for it. Let's read it and see if it actually is as awful as it sounds. The next book that I want to talk about is Before We Met. So this one says, Hannah has always been wary of commitment, but when she meets Mark, a fellow Brit, one hot New York summer, her ideas change. Within months, they are married and she has moved back to London to be with him, leaving her life in New York behind. But when Mark fails to return from a business trip, her certainty about their marriage starts to crack. Why don't his colleagues know about the trip? Who is the woman who keeps calling his office? And why has Hannah's bank account been emptied? Guys, there's already a similarity between these 2. They're both about missing people. This experiment is off to a good start. Oh my goodness. All right, so let's see what Perfect is about. So this one says, a spellbinding story of a young boy who is thrown with far-reaching consequences into the murky, difficult realities of the adult world. Byron Hemmings wakes to a morning that looks like any other, his school uniform draped over his wooden desk chair, his sister arguing over the breakfast cereal, the sound of clicking heels as his mother, Diana, crosses the kitchen. But when the 3 of them leave home, driving into a dense summer fog, the morning takes an unmistakable turn. In one terrible moment, something happens, something completely unexpected and at odds with life as Byron understands it. While his mother seems not to have noticed, 11-year-old Byron understands that from now on, nothing can be the same. What happened and who is to blame? Over the days and weeks that follow, Byron's perfect world is shattered. Unable to trust his parents, he confides in his best friend, James, and together they concoct a plan. Interesting. So far from what I can tell about these books is that they all deal around a central conflict of a missing person, except for this one. This one, I don't know what happens because it just says that something bad happens. I think I'm most interested in this book, so I'm gonna save it till the end so that hopefully there's a redeeming novel in this stack of probably garbage. But Charlie Presumed Dead seems like the absolute worst. I'm gonna start off with this one because I just need to take out the trash early. And then Before We Met doesn't sound bad, but it doesn't sound unique in any way, shape, or form, but If that is the case, that just means that there's probably a lot of comparisons and tropes to draw between all of these. So this is my TBR for this video. I hope you guys stay along for this journey and see how similar these books with similar covers actually are. Hey y'all, so I've officially finished my first book for this video, and boy was it a treat. So I have finished Charlie Presumed Dead, and just right off the bat, I'm gonna warn y'all, I'm probably going to spoil this. However, I really don't recommend that you read this. I have never read a book so terrible in my life, and I think that this might be taking the top spot for the worst book of the year. So if you want to read this and you don't want to be spoiled, I can't understand that, but go ahead and just skip ahead and don't listen to me talk about this part because things will be said about this book. So as I said, this is the worst book that I've probably read all year, and I gave it 1 star. Shocking. To be honest with you guys, I don't even think that this book deserves a star. I don't think it should be given a rating because it is just so bad. And nothing about this book was good, except for the fact that it was so ridiculous that it was funny sometimes. I didn't necessarily mind reading it because of how awful it was. Like, I know that sounds weird, but it was a fun time seeing what the author would do next that was so ridiculous and weird and just doesn't make any sense. So before we get into some quotes, I want to recap what this book is about and give you a little bit more insight as to what actually happened. In the previous clip, I went over the jacket and what happened on there. Basically, it's about 2 girls who realize they were dating the same guy once they arrive at his funeral. So one of the girls, Lena, she doesn't actually think that their boyfriend is dead. They think that he faked his death and that he's actually plotting something bigger. Why does she think that? I couldn't tell you. The author did not give a convincing reason why, as to 1, why Charlie would fake his death, and 2, why he would send these 2 girls on a wild goose chase to go find him. And so that's what they do. Lena and Aubrey decide to travel across the world without telling their parents at 18 years old. Apparently they have the budget for this, and they just go to all these different stops around the world. I believe they end up in India and maybe London. I don't remember. There was a lot of places that they went that was just absolutely not capable for a teenager to do. So don't know why that happened. Don't know how they afforded that. I need some tips on how Lena and Aubrey traveled the world at such a young age because I don't have the funds for that. So the 2 of them travel across the world and they uncover that Charlie has left them some clues and that he's not actually dead. And so what you find out later in the novel is that Charlie actually marked Aubrey with a lamb tattoo that she doesn't remember getting, because that's possible. I mean, I guess it is if she was drugged or sedated very heavily, but like, why would you wake up with a tattoo one day and not question that? Like, that just, what's not clicking for you, Aubrey? I don't know, maybe you should investigate that if you just have some weird markings on your body the next day. So she has this lamb tattoo, and they basically find out at this drag show that Aubrey is marked as a lamb. So Charlie is trying to set her out as a lamb to slaughter. I can't even like explain to you the plot of this because it's so convoluted and just bizarre and didn't make any sense as a reader. So I don't know how to articulate it to you guys and explain what actually happened in this book, because that's a great question. I have no idea what happened in this book because it was everywhere. Charlie wants to kill Lena. So that's what's set to happen at the very end of this book. And Aubrey, he wants to just destroy her life and wants her to go to prison for killing Lena. And that's because Aubrey cheated on Charlie. I think that wasn't really explored very well. There wasn't really many motives as to why Charlie did this to these girls. But my question is, Charlie was cheating on Lena this whole time with Aubrey. So why is he so upset at Aubrey for cheating on him when he was doing that for years? If you're gonna cheat on someone, like, you should expect the same exact thing to happen to you. Like, I'm not saying cheating is okay, but like, why are you acting all shocked when it happens to you when you're the one literally doing it? So this book ends with Lena dead, I think. It was kind of left on a cliffhanger, but basically Aubrey gets sent to jail for killing Lena, and Charlie is never heard from again. So this book was a wild ride. Honestly, it was kind of entertaining from a standpoint of just, you never knew what was gonna happen next, but I cannot recommend this book to you guys because it was just bad. It was just everywhere. Didn't make any sense. I have no idea why Charlie did anything that he did. I have no idea why Lena or Aubrey did anything that they did. And I didn't even feel like I knew the distinguishing factors between Lena and Aubrey because this book ships perspectives between the two, and they literally felt like the same girl. So I was like, am I reading from Lena's chapter or am I reading from Aubrey's chapter? Didn't know the entire time. Yeah, that's what this book is about. I hope you got a good grasp of it, because we're gonna see how similar it is to the next two books in just a little bit. But now I would like to read to you guys some really juicy quotes from this book. So this scene is between Aubrey and Charlie. It's a flashback, okay? So I'll take you out to dinner, you tell her. My parents still give me an allowance. You can thank me next time. She wiggles an eyebrow at you. When's next time? She wants to know. When you visit me. You crack a cocky, mischievous grin so that she knows you're messing with her and not crazy. Parentheses. You are crazy. And in that second, you know you've got her. Then the two of you go out for the best Indian food you've had outside of Bombay. Halfway through the next meal, your phone lights up. It says, Lena. And for a second, you're shocked because you really believed, for the space of maybe an hour, that you had made Lena up. Digital technology says you didn't. So that's a personal favorite of mine. I just love how that's how Charlie and Aubrey started dating, is that he just said that they were dating, and so Aubrey just went with it. Okay. Charlie's inner monologue is so entertaining because like he's just so poorly written as a character, and I can't. Here's another part from Charlie that I especially loved. You'll lead them right into it. Lambs to the slaughter. One lamb, anyways. It's a phrase you've always liked, a phrase you've used more than once. Ironically, it's a phrase you picked up from Aubrey long ago. Sometimes you don't care which one suffers, knowing one of them will. You go back and forth about which one it should be, and it gives you a thrill. Lena, the untamable one. The one who's always interfering, trying to get too close. Aubrey, the one who stabbed you in the back. It's the sweet ones who are the most dangerous. You know it now. So I think that's when Charlie is starting to release like this inner monologue about why he wants to kill Lena or Aubrey, but like I still don't get it. Oh, next personal favorite is when 185 of the novel. Apparently, Aubrey has decided to throw in a personality trait. The book has maybe 100 pages left. I think it has like 80. And Lena and Aubrey are talking, and Aubrey's just like, you know what, I really gotta tell you this. I'm not like other girls. I'm not. I like comic books. Aubrey just has this really big reveal to Lena, and I'm like, girl, it's not that deep. Like, why are you like upset that you think Lena is going to be mad at you or like react poorly to you liking comic books? Like, that's not that quirky. Like, people read and people like comic books. Like, I'm into comic books, she says finally. Graphic novels, if you will. I say, wondering where this is going. I was also wondering where that was going, Lena. Maybe you didn't even know that because I've never mentioned it. I've seen you doodling in that little tablet of yours, I say. Not doodling, I amend as Aubrey winces. Just whatever, you know? She's so quirky. She draws comics. And then here is an excerpt of when Charlie's motive is like figured out. They finally realize that Charlie is actually going to kill one of them, okay? I thought he was crazy. I thought he was just talking up a fantasy, you know? The way he always did. Saying stuff he didn't want to believe in. He kept saying he was going to lead you here, like lambs to the slaughter, and that he was going to kill one and make the other suffer. He said one of you is branded. He didn't want to pull the trigger himself. He was planning to hire someone, so you needed to be branded. Like I said, I didn't believe him, thought it was some elaborate game. Then you two show up, lured here by Charlie like you said he would be, and then this. She grabs Lena's wrist, turning it over so we can all see the crudely etched lamb tattoo. You're branded, like lambs to the slaughter. He wasn't making any of it up. If you stay here, you'll die. Don't you get it? He couldn't handle it anymore. In order to simplify his life, he has to kill one of you. Maybe then I'll reappear. I can't. Like, what? Why? So yeah, those are some quotes from this book, just to give you a little insight about what this book was about and the experience that I had reading it, because boy oh boy was it a treat. Now there's a lot that I could say here about this book, but I'm not here to do an analysis of this book. I'm here to see how similar these three books are. So what I have gathered about Charlie Presumed Dead at the very core of its story. It is a book about murder. It's got disappearance in it. It has two girlfriends, so it has cheating in it. It has a lot of different tropes that it uses and also just really shocking plot twist. So maybe I can use some of those themes and central points in the story to compare and contrast to the other two books that I'm going to be reading. So the next book that I'm going to be starting is Before We Met, and this also has a missing person in it. I believe a wife named Tana has her husband Mark disappear on a business trip. So I think that this will definitely have some similar themes and plot points as Charlie Presumed Dead. So I'm gonna go start this and then I will tell you guys what it's about when I have finished it. Hello everyone, so I've officially finished my second book for this reading vlog, which is Before We Met. So I'm going to quickly talk about this book and then I'm going to compare it to the first book I read, Charlie Presumed Dead. So just to recap, Before We Met is a story about a young woman named Hannah who recently married her husband, Mark. Mark goes on a work trip, and when he doesn't respond to her calls, she starts to get worried and fears that he's missing. So she starts to investigate around the house to see if she can find any clues, and she realizes that Mark actually withdrew all of her savings from her account. So she starts asking all these questions about who her husband really is, what happened to him, and so forth. So this starts off with the concept of a missing person, but pretty quickly in the book, I don't really think that this is a spoiler because it happens within about the first 40 pages. Mark is found and they start communicating, but then she starts to realize that he has been lying to her about other things throughout the story. Before We Met wasn't terrible, but it was by no means great. I am going to give this book 2 stars because I think that there are some redeeming qualities to it that don't make it a 1-star book for me, but it was still really bad. I think that the writing was very easy to get into, it was very digestible, and what I really did love about the writing style is that the author did a really good job of building suspense within the reader. I was constantly wondering what was going to happen next. Even though I did end up predicting the plot twist from about the 40-page mark, I still wanted to know what was going to happen next, and I was still really worried about our protagonist throughout the story. So those are some things that I definitely enjoyed about the book. However, like I just said, I did actually predict the plot twist really early on, and I was waiting the entire novel for the main character to just figure it out, and then she didn't. And then she got in this really dangerous situation, and I don't really enjoy it when the main character of a book is super inquisitive and they're investigating things, but then they're just dumb. Like, you just aren't figuring things out, or they're figuring out the wrong things, and you're like, how did you jump to this conclusion, but you didn't think about this other thing? And that was definitely something I was thinking while reading this. I didn't really find that the main character was totally believable in regards to her actions and what she did next. That's really my only grievance with this, is that I thought that the main character was badly written, and you're inside of her head this entire time, so that's not really a good thing. And also just the fact that I predicted the plot twist. I don't like it when a thriller is predictable, especially so early on, because I want to be figuring out what's going to happen in the story throughout the entire story. I'm okay if I can predict a plot twist and I'm maybe 60% of the way through, because it's going to be revealed soon what's going to happen. But if it happens immediately and I'm just waiting for the character to figure out what's going to happen like I did, then I get annoyed. So both of these books are actually psychological thrillers, which I think is really interesting that publishers think that the reader wants to see a black book cover with a flower explosion on the front with pink. So that's really specific, but honestly, I don't know what else I would categorize these books as by just looking at their covers alone. So maybe publishers are right. This is what readers want when they see a psychological thriller. I also thought it was really interesting that neither of these books took place in the US. This one takes place in London pretty much exclusively, and then Charlie Presumed Dead takes place in a couple different places. I believe they are in Europe for most of it, and then they also take a trip to India, and one of the protagonists is from the United States, so she does have a lot of flashbacks to the US, but primarily these books both take place in other countries. Another thing that both of these books has is gaslighting women. We hate to see it, and that's honestly a really big reason why both of these books got rated so low. I can't stand it when men just talk down to a woman or try to make them think something that is totally not true just because they don't want to get caught in their lies. So I really hate that both these books had that in it. I think that it's definitely more prevalent in Before We Met, and it feels more realistic in Before We Met than Charlie Presumed Dead, but with both of these, it's a no for me because of the gaslighting. And going off of that, there's also this recurring theme of murdering women for some reason. In Charlie Presumed Dead, Charlie goes after both of his girlfriends and tries to kill one of them just because there was never a convincing reason as to why he wanted to murder them. And same with Before We Met, I felt like the killer, when they were revealed, was never really given a good reason for wanting to kill the people that they killed. So for some reason, we're just going out here killing women. And another thing that was also present in both of these books was the idea of cheating. In Charlie Presumed Dead, cheating actually does happen with Charlie because he has 2 girlfriends. I feel like that one's more obvious. And then in Before We Met, when Hannah is first investigating what's happened to her husband, her mind goes to the concept of an affair. So it is definitely mentioned in both of these books and is used as a plot device in both of these books. So those are all the similarities that I found between these 2 books. And now I'm excited to pick up my last book for this reading vlog, which is going to be Perfect. And I don't remember too much of what this is about. I believe it follows a younger main character, maybe a child, And this one seemed the most different from these other two books. As I just mentioned, there's a lot of similarities between these two books, so I'm interested to see what I can find in this book that actually relates to the other two. I'm gonna go read Perfect now, and I will check in with you guys when I have finished this book. Hi everyone, so I've officially finished my last and final means the same thing, Meredith. I've officially finished my last book for this reading vlog, which was Perfect by Rachel Joyce, and this one's gonna be 2 stars for me. So I don't really have that much to say, to be honest with y'all. Like, usually with a 2-star book, I would have a lot of complaints and grievances, but my main thing with this one is that it was just confusing and it felt like a fever dream. I seriously could not tell you guys what this book was about for the life of me. I did not know what was happening at all the entire time, and I got about halfway through and then I picked up the audiobook and I read about 25% of the book that way, and that was a much better experience than reading it with my eyeballs because it's just not good. It's not great, and I'm going to just leave it at that. And so now I'm going to talk about how this book compares to Charlie Presumed Dead, as well as Before We Met, and then we'll do a summary of all 3 and what they have in common. So warning now, there's going to be mild spoilers for all 3 of these books. I can't recommend these books to y'all though, so I wouldn't personally be worried about spoilers. I would not read these books. It's a terrible experience, but just so that you know going into it, I'm probably going to spoil the plot of all 3 of these. Now, first looking at Perfect and Charlie Presumed Dead, both of these actually have hidden runs in them, which was an odd similarity to have in these books. It wasn't a good similarity to have because that's awful. In Charlie Presumed Dead, one of the main characters, I believe it's Aubrey, does a hidden run, and like that's her terrible secret. And then in Perfect, the Perfect was weird, okay? In Perfect, the mother ends up hitting a young girl on a bicycle, and then she just doesn't remember, and her child the entire time is like, "Mom, you hit a girl, like she might be dead. What happened to her?" And the mother's just like, "I didn't hit anyone." And then later on she's like, "Oh, like maybe I did." And I'm just like, how do you not remember that? Like, that was just bizarre and weird, and it felt like the book was more magical realism than it was a contemporary or literary fiction because no one believed this child, which really pissed me off. Another thing that both of these books have in common is that they both have dual perspectives. So Charlie follows both Lena and Aubrey's perspective. So Charlie Presumed Dead follows both Lena and Aubrey's perspectives, and then Perfect follows a character named Jim as well as a young child named Byron. Those are the 2 main similarities that I found within these 2 books. And then with Before We Met, I found a few more similarities as well. This is a really specific thing that happened in both of these books. Both women, like the main characters in both of these books, are gifted a car by their husbands. Like, that's so specific and strange, but hey, that's a similarity between these 2. Another thing that these 2 books have in common is that there's a character named Jim in both of them. All right, so now that I've talked about Perfect and what it had in common specifically with the other 2 books, I want to talk about what all 3 of these have in common. So all 3 of these books have absolutely terrible characters in them. All of these books had people that were just absolutely awful in them, and I hated reading about them because everyone was just awful. The second thing that they all had in common is that they all featured strained relationships. So Charlie and his relationships with both of his girlfriends was very strained. Hannah and Mark's relationship in Before We Met was very, very terrible. And Mark also had a lot of strained relationships with his family members in that book. And then in the 3rd book, Perfect, the main character, Byron, is a child, and he has a very strained relationship with his family because no one seems to want to talk to him or believe him, which I hate. That's an awful thing to have in a book. It's an awful trope, and I just want to get rid of it because we should be believing children. Like, why aren't we? And also, like, it wasn't even just Byron that had strained relationships with his family. Like, his mother and her husband didn't seem to be, like, clicking, and they seemed to, like, have a very forced relationship as well. So no one in any of these books knew how to communicate with one another, which sucked. The 3rd thing that all of these books shared in common was the element of secret keeping, so that was awful as well, because you as the reader were just very, very frustrated with all these characters for just, again, not communicating with one another. The 4th thing is that these are all European books, I believe. Perfect, I don't know exactly where it took place, but the characters are speaking French in some parts of the book, so that makes me want to believe that it was in a European setting. The 5th thing that all these books had in common was the element of cheating, so that was great. I hated reading about that because I hate reading about cheating in general, but reading super terrible books with the element of cheating just thrown in there on top of it was just the cherry on top. And lastly, a common theme that all three of these books shared was women dying, because that just happened in every single one of these for some reason, which was just odd. But you know what? It makes for a good video, because apparently these three books with similar covers actually did have a lot in common. I actually did draw a Venn diagram for you guys, and I wanted to show it to y'all to just visually emphasize what I've learned about this experience. So as you can see from this Venn diagram, which I'm holding upwards because the reflection's really bad, is that Charlie, Perfect, and Before We Met, all three of these had a black cover with a flower explosion on top. And you know what else they had in common? They were all terrible. Basically, the only thing that I learned about this experiment was to never pick up a book with a black cover and a pink flower explosion on top of it again, because the publishers are trying to warn us that this book is going to suck. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you all enjoyed. I had a lot of fun making this despite how awful all these books were. I thought that this idea was just too fun to pass up on, and let me know if you liked it in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.